Okay, here we're gonna have 6 squared is 36. What's x to the 0? Yeah. Times 1 times y to the 11th divided by 4 to the third is 64, not hard to calculate, times x to the 4th times y to the negative 2. You can't argue with the fact that this equals 36 over 64 times 1 over x to the 4th times y to the 11th over y to the negative 2. (36 over 64 reduces to 9 over 16. And 1 over x to the 4th is just 1 over x to the 4th. And I don't know why I wrote an equal sign there. Some sort of inappropriate reflex. But and this is going to be y to the 11 minus negative 2. Keeping with the idea that I'm going to write things out pretty thoroughly, we've got 9/16 times 1 over x to the 4th times y to the 11 plus 2. And that's 9/16 times, I'll combine things a little bit, y to the 13th over x to the 4th. Okay? Now, this could be written with all the variables in the numerator. That's a common form that's requested. You want all the variables in the numerator, so anything in the denominator with a positive power, and back up to the numerator with a negative power. Okay? These are both valid forms. And of course, we could write this as 9y to the 13th over 16x to the 4th. Just multiplying the numerator, that's a valid form. Okay? Now, up here, that's a squared. That's right, with a 2 so we can read it. Okay? A squared. Yeah, okay, there it is. Except A is supposed to have a number on it. I think that's the way it was written on the quiz, so I didn't substitute a number for A, because I wouldn't just have an A there. Yeah, okay. So A is 4. So that'll be 4 squared. Okay? Now, we do this times all this, right? There are a lot of ways to shortcut this, but I'm going to go ahead and write it out. There it is, kind of a mess. But now we can say, well, okay. In the numerator, we got an x to the negative 11th and x to the 12th, right? So we got x to negative 11 plus 12. We got a 4 squared times a 4 to the negative 4th, which is 4 to the 2 minus 4. 5 to the 0 is 1. I'll write out the 1 just to be complete. And y to the negative 9th divided by x to the 6th, y to the negative 5th. So that is all right, each one of these is a fraction. 4 to the negative 2 over 1 times x to the 1 over x to the 6th times y to the negative 9 over y to the negative 5th. And I'm not going to bother writing down the 1 because it's part of a multiplication. It's a factor of the multiplication, so it's not going to change anything. Okay. Now, 4 to the negative 2 over 1. I could write as 1 over 4 squared. I could leave it as 4 to the negative 2 if I want. I'll go ahead and put it in the denominator. Okay. And then I just use my rule. Power of the denominator minus power of the numerator on each term. I want to be careful about my double negative there, two negatives, one negative times a negative. So I'm going to write out an extra step. And this is going to then be x to the negative 5th, y to the negative 4th over 4 squared. Of course, x to the negative 5th means 1 over x to the 5th. Y to the negative 4th means 1 over y to the 4th. Well, I better write this all out carefully. So I'm going to go back to 1 over 4 squared times 1 over x to the 5th times 1 over y to the 4th. And now I can multiply numerators and denominators. Now, the reason I want to write this out is because a lot of times if you got negative exponents in all the numerator terms, factors, you're going to put them in the denominator. You're not going to be sure what goes in the numerator because it's all gone. Okay? So you would write just a blank over this. And people will do that. Don't think any of you would, but just in case, I'm going to mention it, right? So, I take this step, write it as 3 separate fractions. So I can use my rule for multiplication of fractions, and I get 1 over 4 squared, x to the 5th, y to the 4th. Okay. Now, there are a couple of forms that I can put this in. First of all, let's do the 4 squared. That's 16. So I could write this as 1/16 x to the negative 5th, y to the negative 4th. If I want to not have denominators on my variable terms. There are advantages to writing it this way, and there are advantages to writing it this way, depending on what it is you're trying to do with the expressions. So you want to be able to write it out in both forms. This form has all positive exponents, some in the numerator, some in the denominator. Okay? That's one form. Write it out with all positive exponents. And that's how it'll look. Then you want to write it out with no denominator, except maybe on your numbers. Now, there aren't a lot of cases we really want to write it out like that. You should understand that you could. You know, 1/16 just came from 1/4², which is 4 to the -2. So no reason I can't write 1/16 as 4 to the -2. It turns out 4 to the -2 is the same as 2 to the -4. You could even do that. We're not going to worry about that right now.